If you'd asked me 2 years ago about my best friend Leo, I would have told you he was a regular guy. A little intense, maybe, more adventurous than most. But that was his charm, right? We were just normal. We'd hang out, play video games, talk about the future. We were brothers. At least, that's what I thought. That was before I saw the darkness in his eyes as he stomped a mouse to death in my kitchen. Before I saw him drop a pet cat from a second-story balcony just to see if it would land on its feet. Before I understood that some people aren't just intense, they're empty. And way before I realized that what I saw was only the beginning. You think you know a person, inside and out. That bond of friendship feels unbreakable, like a law of nature. You trust them with your secrets, your fears, your life. But what happens when you peel back the mask and find a stranger underneath? What if that stranger is a monster? People with antisocial personality disorder often have a complete disregard for right and wrong. They can use charm and wit to manipulate people for fun or for personal gain. They are terrifyingly good at faking emotions, which makes it almost impossible to see the danger until you're already tangled in their web. This is the story of how I learned that lesson the hard way. The story of how my best friend, my brother, showed me he was a psychopath, and how I barely made it out alive. Leo and I grew up in one of those sleepy suburban towns where the biggest event of the year was the high school football game. Our friendship was forged in shared boredom. Endless hours spent exploring the woods, building shoddy forts, and dreaming about the day we'd finally get out. He was always the leader, the one with the crazy ideas. I was his loyal second-in-command, and I was happy with that. With Leo, life was always an adventure. He just had this magnetic quality. People were drawn to him. He had this easy smile and a way of looking at you that made you feel like the only person in the world. He was charming, smart, funny. Looking back, I see it for what it was, a performance. Psychopaths are known for their superficial charm, their ability to perfectly mimic the emotions and social cues they can't actually feel. But back then, I just thought he was cool. He was my best friend. We were inseparable all through high school. While I was an awkward mess, Leo was confident, almost arrogant. He had a rebellious streak, but it always seemed harmless. He could talk his way out of detention, convince teachers to give him extensions he didn't deserve, and charm his way into the good graces of every parent he met, including mine. My dad loved him. "He's got such a bright future," he'd say, and I'd nod, proud to just be in his orbit. To me, our friendship was real. But for him, I was just providing him with a cover of normalcy, a stable background that made his own strangeness seem less alarming. The first real crack in that perfect facade came on a cold Tuesday night in our first year of college. We were living in a rundown off-campus apartment, the kind of place with sketchy plumbing and a permanent population of tiny, scurrying residents. I was in the kitchen, trying to whip up something edible, when I saw it, a tiny field mouse, huddled and trembling in the corner by the trash can. "Hey, look," I said, kind of amused. "We've got a pet." Leo walked in, a lazy grin on his face. Then he saw the mouse, and his expression just shifted. It was subtle, just a flicker in his eyes. The grin was gone. In its place was this unnerving focus. The air in the room went still. "Hold on," he said, his voice eerily quiet. Before I could even ask what he was doing, he took a slow, deliberate step forward. Then another. The mouse, sensing the predator in the room, darted for the gap under the stove. It never made it. Leo's foot came down. It wasn't a quick, reflexive stomp. It was methodical. He lifted his heavy work boot and brought it down with a sickening wet crunch. Once, the sound was just horrifying. A brittle snap, followed by a soft squelch. He lifted his foot again, looked down at the mangled, twitching thing on the linoleum, and brought his heel down, grinding it into the floor. He did this 3 more times, his face a perfect mask of cold concentration, until there was nothing left but a dark, gruesome smear. I just stood there, frozen. The spatula was still in my hand. The smell of cooking onions was suddenly mixing with something metallic and awful, and my stomach churned. I couldn't process what I had just seen. The sheer, pointless violence of it. The complete lack of hesitation, or disgust. He finally stopped and lifted his boot, examining the sole with a detached curiosity. Then he looked up at me, and that easy grin was right back in place, like a switch had been flipped. "Problem solved," he said, as casually as if he'd just taken out the trash. I just stared, speechless. My mind was scrambling, trying to justify it. He was just getting rid of a pest. It's just a mouse. I'm overreacting. But I couldn't shake the image of his face. There was no anger, no panic. There was nothing. Just a void. What was that? I finally stammered out. He shrugged, walking over to the sink to wash his hands. "It was a mouse, dude. You want them running around, leaving droppings in our cereal." He laughed, a short, sharp sound that didn't reach his eyes. "You're getting soft." He said it like a joke, but it felt like a judgment. I tried to laugh it off, to pretend the cold knot in my stomach wasn't there, but I couldn't. I had seen something in him that night, a capacity for cruelty that felt totally alien. There's a reason law enforcement agencies like the FBI track animal cruelty cases. It's often an early warning sign, a symptom of a deep disturbance that shows a person is capable of escalating their violence. People who hurt animals rarely stop there. Lying in bed that night, the familiar sounds of our apartment, the creak of the floorboards, the hum of the fridge wheel, sounded different. Every little noise made me jump. I kept seeing that boot coming down, hearing that awful wet crunch. I told myself it was a one-time thing, a freak overreaction. I tried to bury it, to go back to how things were, but something had broken. I didn't know it then, but I had just witnessed the first tremor of an earthquake that would eventually shatter my world. I was friends with a monster, and I was just beginning to find out what that meant. For a few weeks after the mouse, things almost felt normal. I buried my unease under a mountain of excuses. He's stressed. It was just a pest. I'm being too sensitive. Leo was his usual charming self, and it was intoxicatingly easy to let myself relax back into our friendship. He was fun, exciting, and being his friend made me feel less invisible. But that memory lingered, a dark stain I couldn't wash out, and it wasn't long before it all came roaring back. It happened at a house party. The place was packed, music thumping, the air thick with beer and sweat. Leo was in his element, holding court in the living room, a crowd hanging on his every word. I was on the balcony, grabbing a moment of quiet, when the homeowner's cat, a fluffy ginger thing named Marmalade, started winding itself around my ankles. Purring. A few minutes later, Leo came out, beer in hand. He saw the cat, and a strange smile spread across his face. It wasn't his charming grin. This one was sharper, predatory. "Hey there, kitty," he cooed, kneeling. The cat, trusting, patted over and rubbed against his hand. Leo stroked it for a moment, and I actually felt a wave of relief. I imagined it all, then he stood up, scooping the cat into his arms. He held it up, its paws dangling. "You know," he said, his voice loud enough for a few others on the balcony to hear, "the ancient Egyptians worshipped cats, thought they were gods." He walked to the edge of the balcony. We were on the second floor. It was about a 15-foot drop to a concrete patio below. My stomach twisted into a knot. "Leo, what are you doing?" I asked, my voice tight. He looked at me, his eyes gleaming with a kind of manic energy. "Just testing a theory. Think it'll land on its feet?" It happened so fast. I didn't have time to move, to shout. He didn't throw the cat. He just let it go. He opened his arms and simply dropped it over the railing. There was a collective gasp. For a split second, there was just silence. Then, a faint, sickening thud from below. It was followed by a high-pitched, pained cry that was cut short. The world went into slow motion. The music faded to a dull pulse. I stared at Leo, my heart hammering against my ribs. He was peering over the edge, a look of intense, almost scientific curiosity on his face. No shock, no horror, no guilt, he just looked interested. A complete lack of remorse is a classic trait of a psychopath. They can rationalize any terrible thing they've done, or simply be indifferent to the pain they've caused. Someone behind me whispered, "Oh my God," and broke the spell. A girl started to cry. People rushed to the railing, looking down at the small, still shape on the concrete. I just stood there, staring at Leo. He turned away from the edge with the same empty, casual expression from the kitchen. He took a long swig of his beer. "Huh," he said to no one in particular. "Guess not." Then he looked right at me, and his face hardened. "What are you all staring at?" "It's a cat. The owner's an idiot for letting it wander around a party." He pushed past me, back into the noise and the crowd, leaving the rest of us in stunned, horrified silence. That was the night I ran out of excuses. This wasn't a pest. This was someone's pet. And he dropped it from a balcony with the same emotion as someone tossing out a piece of trash. This kind of cruelty is a huge indicator of conduct disorder, a condition that can put someone on a very dark path toward a full-blown antisocial personality disorder in adulthood. It's a profound lack of empathy, a core feature of psychopathy. I should have left then. I should have walked away and never looked back. But I was trapped. He had been my only real friend for so long. Our lives were so tangled together that cutting him out felt like amputating a limb. And I was scared. I had seen the void behind his eyes, and I had no idea what he was capable of. After that night, our friendship started to fray. I avoided him, made excuses, but Leo wouldn't have it. He'd show up at my apartment, all smiles and fake apologies. He'd say he drank too much, that he didn't know what came over him. He was a master manipulator, and he could fake remorse so convincingly that I'd start to doubt my own memory. It's a classic tactic. Use deception to control people while playing the victim. Around this time, he picked up a new hobby, shoplifting. It started small: a candy bar, a magazine. He'd do it right in front of me, slipping something into his pocket with a conspiratorial wink. He called it a game, a rebellion against the system. But it escalated fast. He didn't need the stuff. His parents gave him plenty of money. It was about the thrill. This wasn't just stealing. It was about chasing a high, a way to feel something, anything. He started taking bigger risks. Expensive electronics, designer clothes, high-end liquor. His room became a hoarder's nest of stolen goods he never even used. He loved the planning, the execution, and most of all, getting away with it. He seemed to get a sick pleasure from my discomfort. I tried to talk to him, to tell him he was going to get caught, that he was throwing his entire future away. "Relax," he'd laugh. "You worry too much. Life's no fun without a little risk." A reckless disregard for the safety of himself or others is a key symptom of his disorder. He just didn't care about consequences. I was living in a constant state of anxiety, just waiting for the cops to call. He knew I was an unwilling accomplice, and he used my fear to control me, to keep me tied to him. Our friendship had become a hostage situation. I remember one afternoon, we were in a department store. He was being impossibly brazen, stuffing a ridiculously expensive leather jacket into his backpack while making direct eye contact with me in a security mirror. My blood ran cold. I turned and walked right out of the store, my heart pounding. I couldn't do it anymore. He caught up with me outside, his face dark with fury. "What was that? You were supposed to be my lookout." "I can't do this, Leo," I said, my voice shaking. "This is insane. You're going to end up in jail." His anger melted away, replaced by a chillingly calm disappointment. "I'm disappointed in you," he said, his voice low. "I thought we were in this together. I thought you were my friend." He was twisting it, gaslighting me, making me the betrayer. Sociopaths thrive on creating chaos, keeping everyone around them off balance and unable to think clearly. I stood my ground. "This isn't a friendship, Leo. This is sick." He stared at me for a long moment, his eyes completely unreadable. Then he smiled that sharp, predatory smile. "All right," he said, "have it your way. But don't come crying to me when your life gets boring again." He turned and walked off, leaving me trembling on the sidewalk. I thought that was it. I thought I was free, but I was so naive. I had challenged him. And for someone like Leo, A challenge was just an invitation to raise the stakes. The worst was far from over. For about a month, there was silence. A blessed, terrifying silence. I changed my class schedule, blocked his number, and screened my calls. Every time I walked across campus, I felt that prickle on the back of my neck, constantly scanning the crowds for his face. It felt less like a breakup, and more like I'd escaped a predator. And I was always waiting for it to step back out of the shadows. The peace was shattered by a local news headline. A family, the Hendersons, who lived just a few miles away, had been victims of a brutal home invasion. The parents were gone. The media was calling it a Ragunrong. The neighborhood was in shock. Police tape, news vans. It was the kind of horrifying thing you hear about on TV, not something that happens in your own backyard. My first thought was for the family. My second, which filled me with a cold, sickening dread, was, Leo will love this. Psychopathy is often linked with a morbid curiosity and unhealthy obsession with violence, death, and the taboo. For Leo, it was something far more dangerous than a podcast or a horror movie. I was right. That night, a knock on my door, my heart leaped into my throat. I stood frozen, praying he'd go away. The knocking got louder, more insistent. Then his voice, low and urgent. I know you're in there. Open up, it's important. My mind was racing. If I don't answer, what will he do? Try to break in? The fear of the unknown was worse than facing him. With a shaking hand, I unlocked the door. He looked more alive than I had seen him in months. His eyes were wide, glittering with a feverish excitement. He wasn't there to fight or apologize. He was there about the news. Did you see it? He asked, pushing past me. He had a newspaper clutched in his hand. They haven't caught him yet. The whole place is an active crime scene. Yeah, Leo, I saw. It's awful, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He wasn't listening. He was pacing my apartment like a caged tiger. An active crime scene. Man, can you imagine? What that must be like inside. The energy. A cold dread crept up my spine. I knew where this was going. Don't even think about it, I whispered. He stopped pacing and turned to me, a wild, brilliant smile on his face. Think about it. I've been thinking about nothing else. We have to go. Go where, Leo? No, absolutely not. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, he said, his voice high with excitement. To see something real. Not some sanitized crap on TV. To be there, to feel it. I stared at him, horrified. This was a place of unimaginable tragedy and grief. And to him, it was a tourist attraction, an amusement park ride. The complete, bottomless lack of empathy was staggering. He didn't see human suffering. He saw an experience to be consumed. You're sick, I told him, backing away. Genuinely sick. I am not breaking into a murder scene with you. His smile vanished. He stepped toward me, right into my personal space. You think you have a choice? He said softly. You think you can? Just walk away from me. After everything you know. It was a clear threat. He was reminding me of the shoplifting, of my complicity. He was leveraging my fear against me. What are you gonna do, Leo? Tell the cops I watched you steal a jacket. I tried to sound brave, but my voice cracked. Maybe, he shrugged. Or maybe, I'll tell them how you were on the balcony when that cat had its accident. How you didn't do a thing to stop it. How you just watched. Who do you think they'll believe? The floor dropped out from under me. He was weaponizing my own fear and inaction. He was a master at twisting reality to get what he wanted. I don't know why I went. The threat? Maybe. Or maybe a morbid curiosity of my own. A horrifying need to see just how deep his depravity went. An hour later, I was crouched in the wet bushes across the street from the Henderson house. My heart, a frantic drum against my ribs. The house was a dark silhouette. Yellow police tape fluttered in the breeze. There was one cop car down the street, but the officer inside was either asleep or looking the other way. Leo was electric. There's a window around back, he whispered, his breath fogging. Basement latch is broken. I scoped it out earlier. My body was screaming at me to run, but I was frozen again, just a spectator in my own nightmare. I watched him slip across the street, a shadow among shadows. He moved with a terrifying grace. A minute later, he was at the front door, beckoning me. My legs moved on their own, carrying me across the street, under the police tape, and through the front door of that silent, awful house. The air inside was cold and stagnant, and then the smell hit me. Faint, but unmistakable. The coppery scent of blood, mixed with the acrid stench of chemical cleaners. The only light came from the streetlights outside. The house was a mess of overturned furniture and open drawers, dotted with the forensic team's little evidence markers. I was rooted to the spot. This was real. A family had been destroyed here, but Leo was like a kid in a candy store. He moved through the house with reverence, not for the dead, but for the event itself. He ran his fingers lightly over a shattered picture frame. He peered into the living room where the struggle happened. He was just absorbing it. This is it, he breathed. This is history. He started up the stairs. Leo, we have to go, I hissed, my voice trembling. This is a massive felony. He ignored me. The paper said it happened in the master bedroom. I just want to see. He took the stairs, 2 at a time, and I, tethered by fear and disbelief, followed. The bedroom door was ajar. A large, dark stain was visible on the carpet, even in the dim light. That was the moment I finally got it. There was no line for him, no boundary he wouldn't cross. Harming animals, theft, and now this. Desecrating a place of immense suffering for a cheap thrill. He wasn't a troubled kid. He was dangerous. His behavior was escalating, from minor rule-breaking to serious criminal acts. He stepped into the room. And then he did something that will haunt me for the rest of my life. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, cheap digital camera. A flash illuminated the horrific scene, burning the image of that dark stain into my mind. Another flash, he was taking pictures. Souvenirs, that was it. The tether snapped. The fear that had paralyzed me for so long was drowned by a wave of pure revulsion. This creature was not my friend. He was a cancer. And if I didn't cut him out, he would destroy me, too. I turned, and I ran. I didn't say a word. I scrambled down the stairs, burst out the front door, not caring who saw me. Not caring about anything except getting away from the monster in that house. I ran harder than I have ever run in my life, and I didn't stop until I was back in my apartment, door locked and bolted. My body shaking so violently I thought I would fall apart. That was the last time I ever saw Leo. The next day, I packed a bag, withdrew from college, and went home. I told my parents I was having a breakdown. How could I possibly explain that my best friend, the boy they loved, was a psychopath who collected photos of murder scenes? For months, I was wrecked with paranoia, terrified he would come for me. Every creak in the house at night sent a jolt of terror through me, but he never came. It took me years to understand that to him, I was just an object. Once I was no longer useful or entertaining, he simply moved on. No loyalty. No sentiment, just gone. I still don't know what happened to him. Sometimes, I scan the news, my stomach in knots, half expecting to see his face in a mugshot. Did he escalate further? Did he go from being a spectator of violence to a creator of it? That thought keeps me up at night. People like him are at a much higher risk for chronic criminal behavior. He was a runaway train, and I just pray no one else was on the tracks when he finally went off them. The experience changed me. It shattered my ability to trust. For a long time, I saw the potential for that same emptiness in everyone I met. It's a heavy thing to carry. The knowledge that monsters are real, and they don't have fangs. Sometimes, they have the face of your best friend. It's taken years of therapy to even talk about this. To understand that I was his victim, not his partner. If you have ever had a friendship that felt wrong, that made you feel scared or constantly on edge, please, listen to that instinct. Sometimes the red flags are subtle, but sometimes, they are as blatant as a boot stomping down on a helpless animal. Don't make the same mistakes I did. Don't make excuses for them. Get out, your life could depend on it. Subscribe for more creepy and paranormal videos.